Hello, this is Mohan Kelkar. Carbon capture and storage. Is it a mirage or a realistic solution? I want to examine the historical data to see how realistic this idea is. For decades, the governments and industries have proposed CCS as a solution to climate change. We catch carbon from the atmosphere, put it in the ground in an engineered perpetual cycle. This is a critical projection that underpins most net zero scenarios. To meet climate targets, the IPCC and other organizations tell us we must achieve a balanced net zero by 2050. This graph shows the sequestration side of that balance. It predicts a massive exponential ramp up. We start at mere 2 gigatons of sequestration, mostly nature based, in 2015 and have to reach between 7 and 8 gigatons annually by 2050. The blue and orange lines show how much new, massive, unprecedented technology that must be deployed. Many countries have pledged a total of 1.6 gigatons per year of CO2 sequestration by year 2035. The map shows the pledges by many developed countries. The operational realized storage, the green dots, are a tiny fraction of even those pledges. To understand why 1.6 gigaton pledge or an 8 gigaton projection is problematic, we must connect it to the scale of emissions. This graph is the reality check that matters. For 45 years, despite dozens of international agreements and clean energy advancements, our total global emissions have moved in only one direction, up. We started around 20 gigatons in 1980 and are now pushing nearly 40 gigatons per year. That is equivalent to 40,000 million tons. This graph shows an increase in the CO2 emissions per year. On an average, we are increasing CO2 emissions by 400 million tons or zero point 0.4 gigatons per year. When we talk about progress, we need to be very careful about definitions. Proponents of CCS often lead with capture capacity as shown by massive blue area. They present the capacity of announced projects. This is a projection of theoretical potential, but this orange line is a reality. The orange area represents the actual sequestration of CO2 capacity that is available and in the ground. The gap between theoretical announced capacity and the actual constructed capacity is vast and widening. This is a stated capacity of CO2 storage with an annual number of about 52 million tons in 2025, almost 2 orders of magnitude smaller than the total emissions per year. However, the problem is even worse than what is in the stated capacity. The actual CO2 sequestered is even less than the stated capacity. There is an issue of subsurface reality of constraints. There are operational bottlenecks, issue of capture efficiency and system losses, and finally non-technical barriers of regulatory constraints and permitting. As a result, there is a huge gap between stated capacity and actual storage. In 2025, the difference is quite large, with actual storage only between 5 to 10 million tons in that year. This difference is not a temporary issue. It's a structural failure to build and operate gigaton scale capacity. We can calculate the actual storage of CO2 to total emissions. The ratio in 2025 is 0.02%. That is 2 carbon molecules out of 10,000 molecules. It is a statistical rounding error. At least based on the historical data, sequestration cannot be a solution to climate change. Thank you for listening to this presentation.